Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
What's your most paranormal experience? No Schizos edition.
Be me in 2013. Be 17. Having a fire pit with pals. Feels good, man. New guy there, we'll call him Jay, I'll be C, and my other friend MM wants to take Jay to this creepy wooded area near us. It's nearly midnight. M just wants to spook Jay for shits and giggles. Sure, why not? Wav. I take a flashlight before leaving. We get to the woods and, surprise, there are no street lamps. The layout is rough, but the main woods part is at least 3 or 4 blocks in length but only 1 in width. We enter from the far side, essentially a dirt road T-junction 2 blocks to the east. We're about to get into the woods when I remember that coyotes sometimes prowl in the city. I want to know what behind us looks like in case we have to turn back. On the other side of the junction, it looked like there was a dog laying down. Decide to say nothing because I don't want to panic M and J. Right when I'm thinking the dog hasn't noticed us, it perks its head up. It's looking at me. It gets up. Pokerface.jpg. At first it looks like its back is maybe up to my knees. It looks like it's getting bigger, maybe half my height. I'm still silent, but this thing is a threat. It stands up on its hind legs. It's clearing the yield sign at the T-junction. I turn the flashlight on it and it's pitch black, like light doesn't even hit it. M and J turn around because where's my light, bro? We're all looking at this thing looking at us. It sinks into the trees to its right. We now have the choice of walking back, past bipedal dog, or walk in a woods after seeing it in a woods. Nobody believed us when we got back. Nothing happened when we went through the woods, and we never ever saw something like that ever again on repeat trips. I have no good explanations for what we saw that night, and if I was alone, I would never tell this story to anyone. Ever. And a little side story for some weird added context. Be me, B22. Walking home from university, the buses stopped running, so I had to walk late at night. Around 3 blocks away from the woods, some dude on a bike is moving towards me, but on the opposite side of the road. Calls out to me. Just a homeless dude asking for some money. Decide to give him my change. We chat for about 5 minutes, asks what classes I'm taking and whatever. I ask him where he's camped up, tells me in the woods nearby. I decide to ask him if he's ever seen anything weird in there. Tells me he once saw some weird tall deer with antlers. Tells me about how he never goes to the middle of the woods because it lives there. He calls it, get this, the Garden of Eden. I go on my way. I think the woods are gone now, deforested for some mega church or some, but that's my story. I got a couple others, but they're not that great.
I was raised in a haunted house and recently sold it after my father died. I wanted to share several experiences I had throughout my life where I experienced the house in 4 phases. I am not alone in these experiences, as both friends and family, as well as external parties, all experienced things at the home. The house itself isn't old. It was built in the late 1960s on land that back in the 1600s was a massive farm estate, then left to overgrow back to forest. No research I performed found anything dramatic happening there. The house is several miles from the Conjuring House in Burrillville, Rhode Island. Something I only learned in college well after the movie came out. The 4 phases of my life's experience in the home were: young, birth to age 7, which ended as we had to live outside the country where we had renters living in the home for several years. Teen, 12 to 16, our return was quiet, though there were some instances. Young adult, 17 to 20, the most active. Adult, 25 to 30, the most recent, which involved caring for my dying father. Young. The most striking memory I still have involved an incident when I was young, about 5-ish. I remember being scared of the corridor, this comes up later, which my mom took for being the hallway. The room I was in was the smallest in the house, and I remember hating it as a child. I remember making weapons out of Lego and hiding them in my room to fight the shadows. My mom thought I was being creative, though in retrospect I know it was something else. Another vivid memory comes from a dream I had that I still remember clearly. The dream started in pitch black night, no stars or moon outside. The only light came from the lawn where a massive bonfire burned with several natives dancing around it. I wandered out and spoke with the chief, he had an elaborate headdress, who told me the darkness was always broken by the light, or something similar to that. He told me not to fear the corridor, but that it was also not safe. Outside of those two experiences, I don't remember much, but stories from my mom and siblings reinforce later stories I have which I remember more clearly. My dad never spoke much about things, nor did he really acknowledge things. Teen. We moved away when I was young and returned right when I started 6th grade. I had not experienced hauntings at all in between. When we moved back in, small things happened here or there, but it got worse with the young adult phase. It's also when things started happening outside the house. It started with things going missing and then turning up. Like I would drop something on the floor and it would just vanish. I could tear the house apart and find nothing, and then a day later it would be on my desk or laid out on the desk. One summer when I think I was in 7th grade, I was in the habit of staying up all night and sleeping all day. The house didn't have AC, so it was too damn hot to function some days. One night my family was asleep when I started hearing walking around upstairs where my parents slept. My bedroom was on the ground floor. I assumed it was my parents, except it was really late at night. I thought I was in trouble, so I turned everything off. The walking did not stop. It was like a pacing, back and forth. I got worried and walked to the stairwell to listen. Were they sick? Nothing, and it stopped. This continued a few more nights, and I asked if they were sick. They knew nothing about anything and assumed I was delusional from staying up all night and being dehydrated. Later I would know the ghost inside would do that all the time. Outside, things also got weird. Lights began to appear deep in the woods behind our house, which were several tens of acres wild. They looked like campfires in the distance. We started to assume that there were people camping back there. My older sibling later confided with us a story where he was back there camping with his Boy Scout friends about half a mile in, when in the middle of the night, they heard something walking around their tent in the middle of the night. They were scared it was some sort of psycho and started yelling, but it did not stop. Eventually, it ran away. One more fun incident occurred right before my 16th birthday. This was another night incident. We were out for dinner and came home to the house completely locked up and all the lights on. At first, we assumed someone was robbing the place as we never locked our house. We opened the door and the place reeked of cigars. My parents did not smoke. Otherwise, nothing was missing or broken. Later that night, all the lights popped on again and the cigar smell returned. My dad excused it on old wiring and had an electrician come out. This then bumps to the young adult time. Our family was away for vacation when we had a small fire in the basement which destroyed the basement and first floor. Because of it, we lived out of a hotel for nearly a year. That began the really bad times for us. Young adult. I remember the first night in the new house very vividly. My dad was staying at the hotel as he had to work, and we were waiting for the furniture to be delivered. That night I was camped out in my room in a sleeping bag. My mom was in the living room as a bunch of stuff was packed in the otherwise undamaged upstairs. That night we heard the walking again, though this time it was running. Back and forth like someone chasing a cat or dog. My mom assumed it was the new drywall settling. A few days later she had a curtain guy come in to install curtains during the day. He left halfway through as they both were hearing running and banging upstairs. He asked my mom if there were people working up there, but she responded there was no one home. It's then even she would admit that odd shit happened up there. As a note, my grandpa lived up there for a while before I was born. Though he didn't die in the house, nor did he even die in the state. She said, however, she kept smelling his cologne. Another early incident involved my mom and I watching PBS, waiting for my younger brother to get out of school so we could go to the mall. I came home from high school via the bus, and there was an hour between dismissals. We heard a slam upstairs and went up to their bedroom. The culprit was one of my dad's shoes on the other side of the room. My mom said the shoe should have been in his shoe caddy. It legit sounded like someone tossed it. We then heard a plink from my dad's office, and inside it was ice cold. This was in September, so the temp was extremely noticeable. We promptly left and went to the mall. A bad experience was also the most religious. I was asleep post-school and had been all alone in the house. I awoke to my mom and brother coming home from soccer and awoke to see my closet light on. I didn't go to sleep with it on. On the floor in the closet was a crucifix and a kitchen knife wrapped in a white pillowcase with both showing from the top like a bundle of flowers. I confronted my mom about it. I had recently stopped going to church and assumed it was her messing with me. But she said she did not do it. Around that time as well, my brother and I continued to hear the running when my parents would go out and I would babysit him. It was always preceded by a scraping noise, like a dining room chair against a hardwood floor. One night was really bad as it sounded like something running into the walls. As a side note, my mom said she once experienced children laughing up there around this time, like giggling all around. She would only sleep upstairs if my dad was home. When he was away at this point, she would sleep on the living room couch. The outside ghosts also started getting more odd around this time as well. Unlike tropes, the basement was actually the least haunted part of the house. My siblings and friends basically lived down there a la Stranger Things. One night my brother woke me and a friend in a quiet panic. Outside, walking by the window to the backyard, were glowing beings. Think the elves from the Lord of the Rings film. They would just walk around the house. My brother's friend, who was with us then, told us he had a dream of his dead grandfather telling him that they would not come inside the house and to be careful around them. We watched in horror for 10 minutes, and they then vanished. Needless to say, that kid never came over again. We would also see footprints circling the house in the snow around this time. My dad would say they weren't footprints, but patterns of random melting snow. One particularly bad night involved me being alone in the house after graduating from high school. My parents left me alone to go to New Hampshire for the night with my younger brother. I awoke at 2 a.m. to hear yelling in the house, like people arguing. I was freaked out and called my parents. They didn't respond because of the time. I called a friend who drove over. He came in through the basement, where I was, and we both heard the yelling still. It was incoherent belligerence. He said the lights up there were all on, but he didn't see or hear anything. We went outside, and sure enough, the sound stopped, but the lights were on. We ended up staying out in the yard for the rest of the night. In the morning, my parents called, and I lied and told them it was an accidental call. Around this time, we did not have Wi-Fi, only wired internet. If I wanted to surf or download music, I had to go upstairs where the router was. It was like someone was staring at me whenever I was up there. Just freaky as shit. My parents later recalled similar feelings they said only happened after the restoration post-fire. My parents sought out electricians and priests to help. The electrician was to see if it was bad writing causing electromagnetic fields fucking with us. There were no wiring issues found. The priest they had come over to bless the house freaked out over the closet in my parents' bedroom, the one where my dad's shoes were, which was also my grandpa's closet back in the day. Finally, before I moved to college, there was one more incident I remember. At this point, the running around, lights being on, cigar smell, and things going missing were incredibly common at this point. It was late autumn, around Thanksgiving, and my parents had a massive blow-up fight. It hated when my parents fought. The stuff happened more and more when that happened. Both of them screamed right when my brother and I heard a loud thud and glass shattering noise. My dad had a massive glass penny paperweight on his desk. Both my parents stated in the middle of their fight the paperweight levitated and flew into the wall, shattering. My parents were both white as ghosts. Adult. After graduating from college with a grad degree, I moved home with my wife to care for my dying father. My parents divorced at this point, and my younger brother was a loser who was barely attending community college. My wife had heard stories about the house from myself and family and was looking forward to experiencing it. She now never wants to live in a haunted house again. Upon returning, all the old shit was going just as hard. My brother's friends remarked about all the odd shit, and one witchy girl tried rituals to banish the evil spirits. My wife's cat would act odd in the house, seemingly following people not there, watching the wall. I know sometimes that means a mouse, but I doubt it given we never heard mouse noises. And jumping up and running away like someone walking towards him. My wife reported constantly feeling like someone entering our bedroom, air pressure changes, and then feeling like something standing over the bed. She hated it, My wife's grandmother died, and obviously she was devastated. That night I had a dream where her grandma was talking to me in the front yard. Despite it being winter, the dream yard was flowery a la mid-spring with a warm breeze. She told me everything was okay, and if my wife wanted to see her, she just needed to enter the corridor. My wife bawled from the description but didn't know the corridor reference. Asking my mom, she recounted how I was afraid of the corridor as a child and would recount how I would see a door in the bedroom filled with light. The wall with the door was in my childhood bedroom where I had put up a massive bookcase. That wall also was directly below my parents' bedroom closet. Obviously, whatever it was came from that area. The running was bad, and we started hearing the yelling more and more as my dad's health dwindled. Things would go missing. The house being all locked up with the lights all being left on became common, occurring once a month, happening if we all left to eat dinner out. One night we were outside with friends by a bonfire, and my wife was in a trance, saying there was something in the woods staring at us. My brother's friend was in a similar state, and both were adamant, "We go inside." There were 4 others of us, and we decided to extinguish the fire and go inside. Not 1 minute after, we started hearing coyotes yelping and yipping right where we were. My dad died, and it only got worse for the final 6 months we lived there before selling. The spirits did not like that we were leaving. One night I awoke to my brother and father yelling and screaming at each other. Of course, my father was dead. My wife heard it too and was concerned if someone was attacking him. My brother was in the basement with a friend, high on weed watching anime. There was no yelling. As we began packing up the house, odd things got worse. Things went missing more often, the running got to stomping, etc. The worst of it occurred on the final night. Nearly everything was moved out, and I was performing the final pass before the new owners moved in the next afternoon. I swear I heard an eerie, angelic chorus and silver trumpets. I am not very religious, but it was the oddest sensation I ever experienced. I bawled my eyes out, obviously in a bad state given my dead dad and moving out of my childhood home. But there was also more. My wife and brother arrived then, both had work, and too felt the strangeness of everything. As we finished cleaning everything out into the pod and dumpster and the house was empty, we turned off all the lights. The blackness was inky and unnatural, so we booked out of the house. As we pulled out of the driveway, the lights turned on one by one. We sped off. The next morning we arrived to meet the realtor and the lights were all off. I haven't been in the house for 6 years now. I've never experienced these things in other homes. There was definitely something there.
Be me, 25 years old. I lived in a restaurant inn with my GF at the time, was told that a particular room was haunted. Apparently, a family of actors and performers were staying to perform a murder mystery night at the inn. Everyone finishes their makeup except Grandpa, who is slow. The rest head downstairs to get ready for the show. Grandpa doesn't come down, so they send the daughter to go up and check. Dude's dead from natural causes, probably heart failure or something. The police get called and investigate. Everything is good and normal. From that day on, some people can sometimes see an old man in that room, then disappear. Hear boots walking up and down the hall, a man talking but nobody there. Get a little spooked, but forget about it. One night be sitting on a couch in the hall. No one in the inn at the moment, just me and an ex who is sleeping in our room. On my phone, not tired, not high, not thinking about ghosts, sober. In the hallway is a mirror that, from the couch, makes it so you can see all the way down the hall. See a shadow person appear from the middle of the hall and walk down and enter the haunted room. Holy smokes, get up immediately and start praying to Jesus for protection. Wasn't religious back then, but knew of God. Do a sweep of the floor, checking every room. We're on the 2nd floor, pretty high up, so whatever didn't jump out the window, check fire exit at the end of hall and it's still locked from the inside. Never really experienced anything else. I believe that it was a demon, as every single person who lived and worked at that inn became miserable and their relationships degraded. I believe it influenced my ex and I and started the downfall of our relationship as well, because we never fought until we moved there despite living together for several years. When I actually gave my life to Christ, I felt something leave me and a presence lifted off of my life. Not blaming the breakup on the entity, but it made us more depressed and irritable. Pick related.
Story 1. When I was 13 years old. Moved to a new house, still living there now. Early evening and home alone, laying on the couch browsing the internet. Front door is open due to summer heat, but the screen door is locked shut. Suddenly hear a stampede going up the veranda. Demonic barks and growls. I'm left paralyzed, nervously staring at the screen door. See nothing, just hear demonic barks. Suddenly vanishes like nothing was ever there. No signs of anything being on the veranda. Story 2. A year or two later. Come out of my room in the middle of the night to grab a cup of water. Notice the back door, which is in the kitchen, is open, and see a humanoid shadow standing there, peering through the screen door. I stayed frozen for what felt like minutes. Suddenly it giggles in a girl's voice. Run to my bedroom and stay awake all night. No signs of anyone being there. Story 3. A year or so later, I started seeing colored spots in my vision from time to time and odd reflections in my glasses. When focusing on the colors, they would turn into shapes, which would turn into animated figures. I treated this as a trick of my eyes and amused myself with it. Eventually, they turned into bad images and wouldn't go away. They looked like dead people. One night, I snapped and screamed at all of them to leave me alone. They instantly vanished. Never seen them again. No problems with my glasses or any issues with my vision that would cause it. Story 4. 16 or 17 years old. Experience bad dreams. Wake up. See my room like usual. Everything is normal. But my body is paralyzed besides my head. Turn to look over my shoulder. Some sort of deformed woman with a fat and elongated neck stared at me. Greasy black hair, pasty white skin, beady little eyes. She screamed, and screamed, and screamed. Suddenly, I woke up. The world is spinning. Go to vomit in the toilet. Stay up the rest of the night on my computer. No other noteworthy experiences. It's been 8 years now. Never did drugs or alcohol. No mental issues to cause hallucinations.
Anon, this is early onset schizo. You may want to see someone because it could rear its ugly head in your 30s and really mess you up. Please get help.
I've been seeing a psychologist since I was a kid, so I keep my mental health monitored. I'll take your warning into account, but I assure you, I am receiving help already. No signs of schizophrenia in my 20s, but if I develop any, I will have immediate help.
A few, and they all basically happened when I was a kid. I was in the changing room at my school pool. I was getting into my swimsuit when I heard like a strange scraping noise. I turned around and saw a literal skeleton peeking around the corner. I know that sounds silly, but it was like a semi-transparent milky blue color skeleton that just stared at me for like 10 seconds and then back around the corner. Went to go check, nothing. I was walking my dog on a mountain path near my house. It was above a forest that surrounded the mountain. Basically, I saw something large moving through the trees. It was enough to get my dog growling and for her hair to stand up. It was a placid day, and the trees were quite tall. I don't know what else to say. I've had dreams of lizard people and shadowy men since I was a kid. Specifically, a freakishly tall lizard woman who stood behind my bed and had massive claws. The other was a man clad in black who had no eyes. He had a human face but no eyes. If I have a nightmare or a dream surrounding either of these subjects, I usually see them in my room afterwards. There are also reoccurring locations that I'm in. For the lizard lady, it's a long hallway she chases me down. And for the shadow man, it's like a never-ending mirror maze. He also speaks to me, but I can't ever make out what he says. I would honestly not be surprised if I'm a schizo. I see stuff that isn't there sometimes, and I definitely smell things that aren't there.
In 2012, I was in the Marines. I only tell you I was in the Marines to make sense of what I'm about to say. Be a severe drunk when I get home from Afghanistan. Blackout drunk from alcohol every night for 2 years straight. Divorce. Moved into the barracks. I can't stop drinking. My command essentially locks me into a barracks room next to the duty hut for a week to detox me off of alcohol. For 4 or 5 nights straight, I get the same exact sleep paralysis dream of this dark shadow figure in my barracks room, grabbing me by my ankle and lifting me up so I'd be face to face with him. Each time I was about to get directly face to face with it, I'd somehow manage to wake myself up in the physical realm by forcing myself to roll of the bed I was sleeping on, or physically peeling my eyes open on the last night I had this interaction. I don't manage to wake myself up, and he pulled me as always by my ankle slowly until I was face to face with him. There's no face. It's just the most inconceivable blackness that you couldn't comprehend. A black so dark that it separated me from God, gave me severe terror given the pitch and shade that it just froze me in a short loop of eternal isolation. Wake up, screaming and in a pool of sweat. Traumatized me for weeks where I was afraid to sleep. All these 10+ years later, I tell people about it, and usually omit the part that he was wearing a huge circular black hat, because I felt like it made it sound less believable. Often think about this shadow demon with this big hat from time to time. I was watching a YouTube video a few months ago, and the guy signed off his video saying, "Okay, now I'm gonna go have a meeting with the man with the big hat." And I immediately found that odd, made my connection with alcohol withdrawal, induced psychosis with the demon with the black hat from my dreams. Look up the saying. Do more research. Turns out there are many people who have came into contact with this entity.
I don't get sleep paralysis. I get demons who threaten to kill me. I tell them to fuck off and they never bother me again. They don't train you to kill demons in the Marines.
I was too gripped by fear to do anything other than be in complete fear.
Take the fuck off pill, Anon.
A while back, I think it was 2013 or 2014, I was in New Zealand on the southern side of Christchurch. I recall having an average day that day where I was well fed and didn't overexert myself. It's about 1:30 AM and I'm laying in bed. I cannot sleep and swear I saw shit outside, but kept saying to myself that it had to be just the tree outside my window, seeing as whenever the shape moved it returned back to the same spot. Anyway, all of a sudden I began hearing a ringing in my ears. Sorta like when you suddenly lose your hearing for a sec. At the same time I started to get a headache. I remember staring at my alarm clock as the headache and the ringing gradually over a few seconds got stronger and more intense. All of a sudden, I was in a new position in bed, still wide awake. I wasn't staring at the clock anymore, and my headache and the ringing was gone. I looked at the clock, and about 90 minutes had passed. I have no idea what happened in those 90 minutes. I have no recollection and nobody was there to verify what happened.
B15. Summer vacation. Up at 4 a.m. just browsing. Suddenly hear whispering. Everyone else in the house is asleep and accounted for. Every few minutes I'd hear a new whisper, followed by a pause for 20 seconds or so. Get freaked out and decide it's time to go to sleep. Over the next week, whispers keep coming. Start to be more curious than freaked out. Listen hard. It's whispering random shit about my neighborhood, which areas to avoid at night, which convenience stores are good. Mention street name a block away. I'm extremely confused. Anyway, I eventually figured out that it's coming from my guitar amp. The big-ass cable was acting as an antenna, and it was picking up some kind of police or CB radio. I could only hear one person in the conversation and nobody else, even though it was obvious someone else was replying. It just goes to show that before you take schizo pills, you should first look for any unshielded amplifiers in your bedroom.
I like stories like this. Something that sounds paranormal on the surface actually has a completely real explanation, but actually more interesting than, oh my god, it's ghosts, my own. Sitting in front of my laptop, which had one of those external fan pads underneath it because the built-in fans were shit. Also had an AC in the window to my right, pair of headphones hanging off something to my left. One day I hear faint music coming from them. Check for obvious. Some shitty browser tab playing an ad. Nothing. Lean over to pick them up to see what's playing. It stops as I lean in. Huh? Lean back and it's back, faint beat coming from them. Lean back to them, gone. Repeat this several times. Okay, WWTF. Momentarily freaked out. How the hell is it stopping each time I try to listen in? Notice that if I lean in another direction, it goes away. Or comes back. Start moving around, drawing a map in my head of this shit. Suddenly realize and remember this is fitting a pattern. The two white noise sources crisscrossing were creating waves with constructive and destructive interference. In certain spots, white noise is constructed to create this secondary beat pattern. In other spots, it cancels out. Totally bizarre and seemingly paranormal, but the actual explanation was far more interesting.
I used to have a lot of paranormal experiences, but I don't like talking about them. Not because people judge you for believing in this shit, but I think it's more of just a dead-end, one-sided conversation. Anyways, B17. In high school, Mom went on a trip to New York with my sister. I was home alone for a week. Up late, probably 2 or 3 a.m. gaming all night, talking to friends. Out of nowhere, get a weird feeling. Walking down my hallway, no windows, to the kitchen. I feel like I'm being watched. Can physically feel this, almost like a static electricity. For no reason I can think of, I became super scared of windows. Begin shutting all the blinds, it's cool.jpg. Try to calm down, use the bathroom, come out of the bathroom. Feeling is worse, heart literally pounding out of my chest. Walk into the living room. Old CRTV cuts onto pure static max volume. Literally drop to the floor, crying. Call my mom, wake her up. Tells me to drink a shot of tequila and go to bed. I had so many stories, similar ones to this. But this was the worst because of the TV. I didn't step on a remote. I wasn't near other houses. The TV was never on a static channel. It was on the cable box, which was on when I turned it off. I had a lot of experiences in that house.
I've shared these some months ago, but here are a few. Be younger child, 7 or 8 years old maybe. I live with Mom and Lil Sis in an apartment. I always woke up first thing in the morning before anyone. Would go downstairs to wait for Mom because I love my mommy. One day, any other morning, I'm sitting in the recliner facing the stairs waiting. All of a sudden there's this apparition. Average man's height, fully black silhouette seemingly pacing up and down the stairs. This scares the crap out of kid me. I cover my head with a blanket, but I can still see through it. It's still there, going up and down the stairs. Close my eyes and wait. Eventually Mom comes down. I'm a crying mess. Fast forward into my tweens. I live with Mom, Sis, and a new stepdad in this one house that's just across the street from a church. Piece of shit house, roof leaks, mold, grass won't even try to exist in the front or backyard. Generally a bad time. Lots of negative energy, especially given the family's relationship with stepdad. Quite a drunken tyrant. The house has this bathroom at the end of the hallway where the kids' rooms are found. There is an unexplainable aura about this bathroom. Myself, my sister, and even our neighborhood kid friends made a point of rushing as fast as possible to GTFO of their ASAP. One day leaving the bathroom, walking down the hall, when a framed picture of me flies off the wall and lands in front of me. I don't know why I didn't think that was strange at the time of it happening, but in hindsight it just doesn't make any sense. If it came loose, it would have fallen straight down. Meanwhile, in this case, it landed face up a foot or so away from the wall. In my tweens, possibly younger at this time though, going out to visit my actual father, also a piece of shit degenerate. He's staying with his mom in a more rural location not too terribly far from a prison. Sitting on the back porch with him and Grandma sometime in the evening, probably 7 or 8 p.m. Suddenly we hear voices from the woods to our right. The tree line is maybe 100 or so feet away. What sounds like an older man at first, just vocalizing random noises. Then we hear a younger voice like a smaller boy distinctly calling for help. We collectively, WTF, Dad for all his flaws actually goes to the tree line to investigate for a moment, doesn't turn up anything. The voice is intense and continues. At this point they call the cops. Cops come out and investigate, never find anything. As a bonus, at the same property a few years later, this time with my aunt, her family, Dad, and Grandma. I'm hanging out playing some Halo 3 with my cousin. Hell yeah. They're watching football, cooking, or something like that. Aunt's family is such a cool man you don't even know. Anyways, someone looks out the window. They see a man standing in the tree line. Retreat from the window, they think it's an escaped prisoner. Call the cops. Cops show. Nothing found. In my teens now, there's a few stories from this place in particular. I'll go in chronological order. My family, mom, sis, recently born lil bro, stepdad, and I moved to this rural property. It's a weird setup. A trailer house in a cul-de-sac out in Nowheresville, and there's another abandoned trailer in our backyard. Ended up using the abandoned trailer as a gym, eventually LMAO. Either way, day one we just showed up. Family is outside talking. I'm inside the house alone, unpacking things into my room. Uneventful, but for some reason I feel the need to look up. It's that feeling you get when you know someone else is about to talk in the room, or they already have and you just didn't hear them. Look up. My doorknob is twisting. It clicks and the door always opens. I immediately got up to investigate. There's nobody there. Shit, there's nobody in the house. Again, because this is real life. At the moment I think, that's weird. But hindsight has me very spooked. This one may or may not be paranormal depending on your perspective. Scared the absolute shit out of me either way. Same place. Fast forward to midway through the school year. I'm in an AV club, regularly shooting B-roll and editing videos together at the time for class. Come home one day, exercise, eat dinner, play some Wolfenstein. No internet connection out there, so I'm stuck with single-player games, LMAO. Pass out, start dreaming. I'm in my backyard. I have a camera and tripod. I'm getting B-roll for a project. I'm recording down this little clearing that I made. IRL, I had taken a machete and made a few paths into the woods that border my backyard. It was pretty sick. Turns out we had blackberry bushes out there. I set up my cam at the start of the trail, pointing inwards to the bush. My perspective shifts to the cameras. There's a white blip floating at the end of the trail that I cut. It's getting closer, and there's a noise coming with it. As generic as it sounds, it's a low static sounds mixed with a type of screaming vocalization. It's close now. It's a floating flower white creepy as shit face. The sound is loud now, booming static and screams. It's all that I can hear. The nature sounds are muted. Wake up IRL. I can't move my body, only my eyes, but I still hear the sound. Roll my eyes to my right. That face now has a body and is crawling out of my monitor towards me. Its face is practically pressed into mine. The sound is practically blasted into my ears. I'm internally praying and begging that my sister will somehow hear my telepathic screams and burst into my room. Regain control of my body, fall off of the bed trying to punch the ghost face. Sleep paralysis, I know. Still though, screwed me up for a minute. Same place a month or so later. I'm in the living room. Mom and stepdad are hashing it out in their room, which is connected to the living room. I'm enduring the uneasiness that comes with the situation, sitting on a small dresser/bunk facing their room. My head is down in my hands. I look up. I couldn't see it for long, but what I can only describe as a disembodied torso flies right into and through me. I can feel its wind blow my hair as it does. Same place, about a year later. Mom has ditched the deadbeat, thankfully, and I can start having people over now. End up getting a GF, pretty sweet. One day I'm going through a rough patch and she comes over during the night. We're sitting in the back of her truck, stargazing, shooting the shit, young love stuff. Above the tree line, I notice a light moving from right to left. Motion to her, ask, "Hey, are you seeing that?" We both watch the light. It's moving without a sound. Then halfway through the tree line, it splits into two lights. The lights are dancing around each other, crisscrossing at varying distances from one another. Eventually, it rejoins into a single light, continues moving for a very short distance and blips off out of existence. I think that does it for my stories for now.
Not mine, but my mother just told me about an apparent haunted house 3 blocks from here. She heard the story at a party some days ago. House is old, something like 150 years. Apparently it was a nunnery, you know, where they teach nuns. They also performed abortions on rich people's daughters in case it was unwanted. After the nunnery, a priest and his 2 sisters move in. One is schizo and the other is into black magic. Priest gets killed by sisters as a sacrifice of your earnest thing for power. Then a couple moves in. Apparently the woman was also into dark magic, but no more info on that. Fast forward to the current family. They buy the house and do some remodeling. They find little bones when they remove a bathtub. They also remove a fig tree from the backyard, and there's a lot of wacky shit under it, including a bottle with stuff in it which they decide to open for whatever reason. Family starts hearing voices and seeing shadows. Events especially focus on mother and daughter. Eventually everyone feels heavy, general sadness and depression. Call a local specialized priest. Catholic Church can't intervene in non-official events, but non-priest assistant takes the case, performs cleanse. Apparently a family member is under the control of a spirit, performs pseudo-exorcism. Medium mentions that it was just a jester spirit, not an evil one, but the rest of the house was cursed. Medium mentions that someone was going to die in the near future if the cleanse didn't happen. After the cleanse, they can live a more normal life, but the voices and shadows are still there. This could be a made-up story by an old hag trying to get attention, but hey, I've read shittier fanfic here.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.